Hey there, hope you're doing really well, and welcome to AceTim number 28, in which we'll answer a couple of minutes, go over some comments, and yes, I will talk a little bit about coronavirus. I've been debating what to do or not, but anyway, as there's a question about that, I decided we can fold that into that question. So anyway, hope you're doing really well, and as always, nothing here is specific medical advice, but just general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to anyone tuning in here. And with that said, I want to start with actually a follow-up question from Jade, who sent a question that we talked about last Ask Daniel episode. And here it is. Hi, Daniel. I hope you're having a good beginning of the day. I would thank you for answering my question and giving me some relief. My health anxiety makes me crazy and sometimes takes over my life. The fear of sporadic fatal insomnia just gets me so worked up and doesn't allow me to live my life. With my symptoms, everything feels so real, and I make it so much worse by doing research. I would really like to figure out how to best move forward, how to beat this thing. And I think, was there actually an answer question before that? No, that was it. So I just, quickly want to comment on this and say that one thing that I think, is working in your favor here, Jade, is that you have insight, that, researching and trying to figure it out is not actually helpful to you. You know that you have a health anxiety, all that is working in your favor. I want to say we're actually going to talk more about sporadic fatal insomnia in this episode, and I hope that will be helpful. I'll right away share my main thoughts on that one, which is that like with anxiety itself, with insomnia itself, oftentimes the first frustration comes from ambiguity, not knowing, and I think a lot of people that are afraid that they have this extremely rare neurodegenerative condition called sporadic fatal insomnia, have that because there's no way to really find out if you have it or not. It's the what if that's driving the insomnia and the anxiety, really, like what if I have it, and people are looking for clues. Yeah, that seems to be it, etc. Now, one thing that I think is actually going to make a big difference is that we now, now easily can sequence your genome, like 23andMe and those type of things. So I think already now I understand that it's possible to kind of do it yourself, sequence your genome and see if you have the mutation associated with SFi. And you can check out a comment by Chad, or I think he calls himself High Phil Invest on YouTube. It's a comment on episode 284 where he describes how you can actually check yourself if you have it. I haven't gotten that completely confirmed by him or anybody else, like how doable it is, but just the mere fact that you can actually check if you have it or not with a test, I think that's going to take away so much anxiety from the sporadic fatal insomnia world there. And the second thing is, in the past, I would kind of like take questions from viewers and then try to find evidence that maybe their symptoms did not were not typical symptoms of SFi. But then the problem with that is that it leads again to like this self-monitoring, like I have this, but I don't have that. Could it be like the what if situation? Maybe it becomes even worse by trying to, find evidence that you don't have it, etc. So I think a better approach often is like accepting that you cannot know, and then thinking about like, okay, let's say I cannot figure it out, and just like leave that aside. And then, in the super rare off chance that you have this condition, what are you going to do? Well, there's no treatment. So you should just try to enjoy your life, do things while you have the kind of like when you have the mental capacity to enjoy things, spend time with family, with friends, etc. Right? If you don't have it, then actually you should do the same thing. So it leads you down the path where like it actually doesn't matter if you have it or not, you still should do the same thing, right? So I hope that that's helpful to you. And I'll just add one more thing. When it comes to any form of anxiety, one thing that I think can really help is this like kind of intense journaling that I learned from a psychologist named Nick Wignall, who's been on guesting the channel 3 times. So what he said is really good is pick some time during the day, not much, like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And during those 15 minutes, you write down every single thing in your whole entire life that you're worried about. And the more you can get down on paper, the better. And, and think of it like an exercise. If you do it today, you're not going to feel any different probably tonight. But if you do it every single day, keep going, you are creating this outlet for your brain. And it doesn't kind of bombard you all the time with these anxious, thoughts, but rather, it has its outlet. So you do it one time during the day, and then it leaves you alone more during the rest of the day. So, those are just some thoughts I hope will help, Jade. And if I can answer any more questions, please stay in touch and hang in there and stay in touch again. Yeah. So yeah, with that said, actually, let's move to this comment from AceTim. Where is it? Which was a day ago. This is a comment on Insomnia Insight 299. And he said the following: Hey, Daniel, I have a question that is relevant to our current situation. How can we not lose sleep over the coronavirus? I've heard that sleep and the immune system go together. I'm curious for your thoughts. So just a quick preamble there. My wife told me, like, what, you should be talking about this on your channel. And I was like, I don't know, because it's kind of like when somebody is when somebody is having a panic attack, there's almost nothing you can do. Almost anything you talk about becomes like more triggering. Like, oh, you look at that direction, look at that direction. Like, so I was like, I'm just going to sit this out. And then, but she also made a good point. She was like, well, maybe you could, share your thoughts. Maybe that would help people. So I said, I'm not going to kind of talk about it, but if somebody asks me a question, then of course I will answer the question. So I want to thank AceTim for this question. So a couple of things. First of all, when it comes to any like health consequences of not getting enough sleep or insomnia, and by the way, the difference there is like not getting enough sleep deprivation is just objectively not sleeping more than 6 hours or something like that, depending on who defines it. Insomnia is the subjective feeling of like, I just can't fall asleep, I just can't stay asleep, I'm struggling with sleep. But that's the differentiation. That's the difference between sleep deprivation and insomnia. Now, either way, neither sleep deprivation or insomnia has ever been shown to cause any sleep problem or any health problems, including like immune system deficiencies. And the reason I can say that with much confidence is that, well, I've reviewed the literature, but also it's impossible to do those studies. You can't take 1,000 people and sleep deprive half of them and follow them over 5 years and see who gets a health issue or not. Yes, you can do there's been a lot of these like smaller studies where you take like 12 people and you sleep deprive half of them for like 4 days, and then you check their like T cells or something like that. But that doesn't really tell us anything. So there's no evidence that short sleep or insomnia causes any sleep problems. So I think that is very, very important. So that's kind of number one. But I put down a couple other things that I thought were important to talk about here. And one is the like 2 arrows, which I love talking about. And so this is like this ancient Buddhist philosophy that is super relevant like today and probably forever. And so the 2 arrows are these. So the first arrow is something that happens that we have no control over, that we cannot foresee or predict or prevent or anything like that. And then the second arrow is our reaction to that thing that just happened. And for some reason, this has become my standard example. That is like you're served some hot coffee, you burn yourself, and you curse out the person who served it to you. You've been hit by 2 arrows now. First, you burnt yourself on the coffee. You couldn't really foresee that happening. You couldn't prevent that. But then you're hit by the second arrow, which is like your reaction to it. And that hurts, in this example, definitely hurts more than like cursing somebody out, being really mad actually hurts you more than you burning your lips, So that's the 2 arrows analogy here. And I think that applies really in these times, because we have this, novel version of a virus. The coronavirus, something I learned about in med school. It's been around for forever, but then we have a new variety of that, and like that is the first arrow. There's nothing we can do to that could keep that from happening. That's circumstance. That's something that has happened that we don't have control over the fact that we have this new virus. But then that's the first arrow, and then we have the second arrow, which is our reaction to that. How do we now, not as a person, not like a state or a country, like as the entire world, like how do we as the world react to that? Now that's the second arrow. And people are worried about different things. Personally, I'm really worried about the second arrow. Again, like I don't want to anyone who's ill or worse dies from for any reason. That's a tragedy. That's terrible. But a lot of the times that's something we cannot control or prevent. But the reaction to that is something we have control of. And when here where I live, we're, as I'm sure all over the world, or at least in the States here, like people are hoarding stuff. There's a lot of anxiety, panic. People are buying guns in big cities and things like that. That makes me really worried. Like the second arrow, I think personally, I'm really worried about that one. So anyway, I think this two arrows is so applicable to in so many cases, and this is one. Now, so another one I thought was very applicable is the inside-outside perspective, which with insomnia, for someone like myself who takes care of a lot of people with insomnia, I have the outside perspective, and the person that has insomnia has the inside perspective, right? And from the inside perspective, things are often very confusing, frustrating, scary, anxiety-provoking. But from the outside perspective, you can see that there's nothing unusual going on. And if this person just started changing their habits, their thought process, did the work, they're going to do really, really well. And now we cannot help but now we have this inside perspective, right? We don't know, we don't understand from the inside what's going on. Like we get a lot of confusing reports from different people. And it's like, so we're in the inside. It's difficult for us to really understand what's going on, But if there was an outside perspective, if we had a sister planet out there who'd had this a couple of times, and they could tell us, listen, this is what's going on, you don't need to worry about that. This is what's going to happen. We can, blah, blah, blah. Then we could get the outside perspective. But the inside-outside perspective was something that I thought about too, in light of the coronavirus, and this one too. Last one I wrote down was, something that kind of always frustrates me when it comes to insomnia is that there's just the lack of the voice of reason out there. Like everybody from academia, not everybody, of course, they're awesome people who are really reassuring, but a lot of people from academia, the media, the NIH, the Academy of Sleep Medicine, everybody out there is just putting out info that is scaring you, like you have to sleep this much. If you don't sleep enough, you get this and that. And it's easy to see why, because everybody quote unquote benefits from that in the sleep world, meaning like researchers, they need funding, the media, they need eyeballs, bloggers need eyeballs, institutions need to seem like they're kind of know what they're doing and be important and stuff like that. So in light of what's happening now with the coronavirus, like it's just the same thing on steroids. Like there's just you just never hear anyone that says anything that's reassuring or calming. And I think it's, again, like a lot of the people that we hear from kind of benefit from not necessarily creating chaos, but getting attention and portray themselves as if they're doing something they have control over it and things like that. So I think that was kind of in a nutshell what I want to talk about there. Hope that was helpful. And the last thing I almost forgot. I think we should definitely talk about this in like 6 to 12 months, something like that, when we can have a little bit of that outside perspective. So if I forget, anyone out there, please remind me that we should talk about this, and hopefully we'll be like, oh yeah, remember that coronavirus thing that was going on? Yeah, and actually, and then we can talk about it, whatever. Okay, cool. So that was that. And now let's move over to a question from Roshna. Where is it? There it is. This came in 10 hours ago. Salam. My name is Roshna. I'm from Pakistan. I'm 22 years old. I had my I had appendicitis surgery 6 months ago. After surgery, I had severe panic attacks. And after that, I have sleep problems plus poor appetite. My deep sleep is only 45 minutes. It's like I'm awake all night. My body feels exhausted. I don't know what to do. These 6 months are the worst time of my life, and still it is. I can't sleep. I'm so exhausted. I just want to die. I can't take this anymore. I don't know what kind of insomnia this is, but it's driving me crazy. Also, I don't feel hungry at all. Suggest me something, please. Thank you. Well, first of all, Roshna, thank you so much for reaching out. And very sorry to hear this has been happening. I want to say that actually, before I forget it, oh, sorry, I'm getting distracted here, but it's VeganASMR replied. And in case you're watching this VeganASMR, I'm going to talk about your comment in a second here. And then thanks so much for all the input. But yeah, back to Roshna here. I think I encourage you to actually look at the latest Insomnia Insight episode, number 300 from Alex. And, a lot of things are similar there. Like he had a health scare, like he was worried about something with his ears, tinnitus, and that triggered a lot of insomnia. Now he's doing really, really well. And he had trouble sleeping for a couple of months too, like a little bit shorter than you have had it, but also like in the same ballpark. So if you listen to that episode, I think you will find some reassurance there. Second thing here I'm thinking is what you're describing, Roshna, is very common, very common. When it comes to insomnia, I love to talk about this 3P model. We'll do it really briefly here as well. So these 3 Ps, not the ones you eat, but the letter P, explain how some of us get this like long-standing insomnia. So the first P is, predisposition. People who are maybe tend to worry or are health conscious or tend to overthink or just kind of like type A, like perfectionists or like hardworking or something like that, have a tendency to get more insomnia. But having those traits doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to have insomnia. It's just like it increases your risk of having it at some point during your life. A lot of people out there have many of these traits, but sleep fantastic. And I'm guessing you slept good before this. So, you can sleep just as well. And having some of these traits doesn't mean anything, but they're good. They're good for kind of understanding what's going on. So let's say, just for argument's sake, that you have one or two of these traits. Well, that in itself is not a problem, but then comes the precipitating factor. That's the thing that kind of creates a sleep problem in the beginning. So in this case, we know what that is. You had appendicitis surgery. That seems to have triggered a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, etc., and poor sleep. So we know what the precipitating factor was. The thing with that is when you're having surgery, that it is normal not to sleep good for a while. The initial bout of like disturbed sleep is completely normal and expected. So what becomes really important is the third P, which stands for perpetuating factors. Those are the things that take like a brief sleep disturbance, which is normal, to like all out like trouble sleeping for like months on end. And what are those predisposing or what are those perpetuating factors? Well, that's when you start like researching, wondering why you can't sleep. You're trying things to sleep, you're experimenting. What's happening is like you try something, let's say you try to keep it dark in your room, right? And you're trying to sleep more, and then that doesn't work. You're not sleeping anymore. You feel like that things are hopeless. I'm not getting better. You try another thing, that doesn't work. You try a third thing, nothing works. You try more things, you sleep worse. And that's like you get more worried and worried. That's the chronic insomnia spiral right there, caused by these perpetuating factors. So I hope that helps to maybe make you understand why, you can go from having appendicitis surgery, trouble sleeping, to like having like ongoing sleep problems. So with that said, the hunger, I can't, that's kind of, I don't know. I definitely know that when we're anxious, depressed, etc., when we're not feeling well, we often don't feel hungry. But as always, if any health concerns, of course, talk to your doctor. But I want to say this, that what you describe here overall is something that's very common, a typical story of how insomnia starts happening. And I think just by browsing through my channel, by the way, if you check the description here or a description of a recent video, you'll find what I call like the core curriculum, like the most important videos that you can check that, or just educate yourself on the channel, and I think you'll get a lot of good information. But to give you some specifics, what I tell everyone, what I think helps everyone that has trouble sleeping is 2 things: set it and forget it. Set it is get up the same time every morning. Don't spend too much time in bed, maybe 6 or 7 hours, and that helps you to build a sleep drive. You're really sleepy when you go to bed. It's also a very important psychological step away from trying to sleep. And so that's set it. You spend maybe 6 hours, 6.5, 7 hours in bed, not more. Get up the same time every morning. And apart from that, forget it. Like, try to keep yourself away from researching about sleep, reading about sleep, experimenting with your sleep, and then sleep will come to you. So I hope that helped, Roshna. Any follow-up questions, please email me back, and hang in there. Okay. So with that said, let's move on to real briefly here. Produceman 13 wrote a comment here on was that also on Insomnia Insight number 299, and in the comment as well as my reply to Produceman, we talked about like this thing called a sleep window, which I just talked about when it comes to Roshna. Like, a sleep window is like when you decide I'm going to spend like 6.5 hours in bed, or 6 hours or 7 hours. That's your window, your the window where all sleep should be placed. Sometimes it makes sense to kind of like, if you have trouble sleeping, to shorten the sleep window, actually go to bed even later so you're really sleepy. But I find that actually the other part of set it and forget it, the forget it part, is more important, and for Produceman, for you here, I think again, like, I know this is the hardest part, but really trying to shift attention in another direction is the key. Once you've understood, I know you followed my channel a lot, Produceman, so I think you understand why we have insomnia, what causes it, etc. And you're doing the sleep window thing. And so I think, again, like, the most important next step is to try to find something that can become bigger than insomnia. I always usually throw out some things like learn to play the trombone, or like spend time trying to learn a new language, or anything that's enjoyable, that really gets your attention and focus. And that thing can just like take more and more of your time, your attention and focus. And guess what? After a while, you don't even think that much about sleep anymore, and then it comes to you. So you probably heard me say this before, Produceman, but I hope this will help. So also stay in touch. Any questions, let me know. And thanks so much for the comment. And so, yeah, finally here, a very recent comment from VeganASMR. And this is a comment on Insomnia Insight number 46, where I talk about these rare genetic conditions called familial and sporadic fatal insomnia. And so let's read this whole comment, and then I will talk some more. Hey Daniel, thank you so much for your video. Sadly, I have to tell you that it is not true what you say about sporadic fatal insomnia. Just search for the research paper from 2018, sporadic fatal insomnia in Europe. This is a meta-analysis of 13 cases over the past 20 years. It is clearly said that psychiatric symptoms and sleep disorders are the common first symptoms. But I've done a lot of research on FFi and SFi, and I've come to the conclusion that the sleep disturbances themselves are not comparable with normal insomnia, because they almost always come with sleep-related myoclonus, jerks, involuntary movements, dream enactment, breathing difficulties like snoring, and apnea, vocalizations, most often a cluster of those symptoms. So just not sleeping is not a symptom of SFi or FFi. You really develop sleep behavioral disability. For all of you who want to see how someone with confirmed FFi looks like sleeping, and you really have to put it in, look at this video, and there's a link to video. I hope this helps and takes away your anxiety. For me, it has helped me a lot in my fight against FFi anxiety. And actually, I'm curious. We literally just came in a comment, another one from VeganASMR, and she said, "Thank you for your reply." And I'll tell you what I replied in a second. I wonder about this point too, but I've read about this phenomenon in other papers as well. What is slightly difficult about the European paper is that 10 out of 13 papers describe treatment-resistant insomnia, but only 5 reported daytime sleepiness. Okay, I got it. Yes. And then she said, "Are you interested in all the papers I've read and or my research summaries? If you tell me your email," yeah, absolutely. Yeah, send it over. That'd be really cool. Daniel@insomniainsight.co is my email. But anyway, I'll comment on your comment, VeganASMR. So first of all, I think the latter part of this first comment is super, super important, where VeganASMR shares that what we call insomnia is not the same as the sleep disturbance seen with SFi and FFi. Super important. And I'm not going to read it one more time, but I encourage everyone to read that latter part of this comment from VeganASMR on Insomnia Insight number 46. Very insightful. I pulled up that paper that was referenced, and what I find to be problematic here in the paper is that there is no definition of insomnia. No definition of insomnia, and that is not, it's not uncommon that people don't understand what insomnia is and mix it up with what's called sleep deprivation or short sleep. And I think that may be happening in this paper. So well, there were a couple of things I want to talk about. Let's just read. Actually, this is part of the discussion here. Yep. So let's read this part. Previously, the peculiar sleep and autonomic disturbances described in FFi were referred to as agrypnia excitata syndrome, whose distinctive features are severe loss of sleep and persistent motor and sympathetic overactivity. In our patient population of SFi, insomnia was an early and prominent manifestation. You know, here you go again. Like they describe in the first part here, how, you know, previously severe loss of sleep has been reported. And here we say insomnia. It's like they don't understand the difference between the two. They don't understand that sleeping little is not at all the same thing as insomnia. Insomnia is the subjective, you know, I can't sleep, I struggle to fall asleep, I wake up all the time, I can't fall back asleep. That struggle with sleep, that is insomnia. Somebody who sleeps little, that's completely different, you know, that's completely different. So I think when they, in the early part of this paper, say that so-and-so many people had treatment-resistant insomnia, we don't know what that means at all. That could very well be that somebody slept very little and you give them medication and they didn't sleep more, and they call that treatment-resistant insomnia. I try to look for, you know, a definition of insomnia, and also how did they know that these patients had insomnia. You know, there was no description of how they found that, or, you know, any chart. There were no chart notes or anything like that. And I think to just kind of drive this home, and I think this was really enlightening. This is really enlightening here, where they say, it was particularly evident in patient number 2, in whom the sleep disturbances was discovered at neurophysiological evaluation, despite this not being reported by the patient. Here you really have it. Like, that is total confusion. You know, if someone has a sleep disturbance that's discovered at a neurophysiological evaluation, they do not have insomnia. They definitely do not have insomnia. Clearly not, you know? So I think there's a lot of problems with these type of papers where people don't understand the difference between sleep disturbance and insomnia. So that's, I think that is super important. But I think, again, like the main take-home message here is that I think VeganASMR put it very well. And I totally agree with that. Insomnia is, again, the subjective thing. With SFi and FFi, you have a completely different type of sleep changes, so let's call it that. So I want to thank you, VeganASMR, for that comment, and I'll comment to your comment in a second here. And with that said, if you have any questions, please send me an email, daniel@insomniainsight.co, or leave a comment, and I'll be back to answer your questions on Monday. Until then, take it easy.